vast American landscape is home to over 500 indigenous nations, each with distinct cultures, language, and traditions that have been in existence longer than the United States has been a country. This survival is a testament to the resilient ability of Native people to adapt to the many violent changes in their history.
Our oral history goes far beyond written documentations.
We were the first Americans. We're here. We're going to be here. We're not going anywhere.
I've heard lots of stories passed down from my grandparents regarding what our tribe went through when people came from other countries.
We survived. We're survivors. Our people have survived from a lot of incidents, a lot of events.
Today, Native communities are very distinct from one another, yet they share a common relationship with the local, state, and federal government as they navigate a modern world of cultural diversity. Since the dawn of time, Native people have lived through all the seasons of life. From birth to death, this life cycle has always been a part of the natural order. In cases of a natural death, such as homicide, state and federal law enforcement agencies and service providers are called in to serve these tribal communities. Working as an outsider in a Native community is complicated by the historic relations of the past that have affected how Native people react to outside interventions.
Working violent death in Indian country is a very complex and complicated challenge. To honor the families, to honor the cultural traditions of the families is a major challenge.
There's an entire legacy of promises being made by the federal government that have never been lived up to. And I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned is if you don't have the ability to listen and you don't have an interest in learning the historical perspectives and the historical animosity that is warranted towards the federal government, you're not going to survive being a prosecutor in Indian country.
Taking of a life is a final act that brings great suffering and many unanswered questions for those who have lost their loved ones through violence. In Native American communities, tribal culture plays an important role in how tragic news of death is delivered.
God created the universe. There's a man and a woman He creates, but also He creates the life and the death. The homicide is not just today. It was in the past too. There's a lot of histories, a lot of stories behind all that.
It's not something unusual to us, the violent death, because they did have murders before. Like any other culture, we have a name for it. A suicide, a violent death. They weren't as often as they are today. And the kinds of deaths that happen are much more, to us today, much more violent and much more too often, but especially at that young adult age area.
Violence has become acceptable, and it's the frustration, the despair that we're living here on the reservation, and that they're upset that they can't provide for their families, the men, even the single mothers.
I've done homicides now for close to 20 years, and what I would say, homicides are, they are not, at times there's a uniqueness about homicides in Indian country where sometimes the brutality that's involved in the way that some of our victims have been killed is unlike what you see sometimes in the city or off the reservation.
When there's a homicide, it's just, very shocking and unbelievable because it's unnatural. The natural death is a natural thing, but when it's a homicide, it just hurts more because everybody's saying, okay, what went wrong? What could we have done? That type of thing. Instead of when there's a natural death, everybody accepts it because it's a natural thing and it's part of the cycle of life.